Welcome back to Cocktail Cinema, folks, your weekly movie review podcast. I'm your first favorite bartender, third favorite author, Josh Price, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Greg.
Hello, hello.
And our producer, Shasti.
Yes, yes.
It's time to warm up your bananas and dive into what many film critics say is one of the greatest films ever made, City of God.
There you go.
City of God. There we go.
Now he nails it after we scratch the intro.
City of God came out in 2002. It is a Brazilian language film out of Brazil, or a Portuguese language film out of Brazil. It was a book first, and then a book came out in 1999. And it is considered by many to be some of the greatest Brazilian art ever made. This is also a first for us. This is a movie that has two directors. The first is Fernando Meirelles and Katia Lungi. Mm-hmm. It had a $3.3 million budget and a $30.6 million box office return.
Jeez.
And surprisingly, for a foreign language film, it has a familiar face or two.
Couple. Yes. Dive right in. Alexandre Rodriguez as Rocket. And he's known for Firecracker, if you want to translate, loosely translate to Portuguese. Next is Leandro Firmino de Hora as Lil Zay. And, he's ugly. We'll get into that later, I think, a little bit. Next on the list is Felipe Hagensen as Benny, his best friend, Lil Zay's best friend. Mm-hmm. Sue George is kind of the one that stands out. Musical artist, across the board. He's respected. You know him from like Life Aquatic. Big shout outs.
He's got a David Bowie cover album, all in Portuguese.
So I think Sue George stands out big time in there. There's a lot of other elements in this film. I can't say all their names right, so I'm not going to try. But these are the main four players.
Yeah, those are the big ones. Those are the ones that you follow for the most part. And there's a lot to talk about here.
Yes.
There's a lot to talk about. And there's a lot to drink on here because it's been a while since we had a traditional drink, but I did a little bit of digging. I did my job. Mm-hmm. And I found that there is a very popular Brazilian drink called the Caprisima. Now, it's kind of a cousin to the mojito. They have a specific liquor for it that is kind of hard to find around here, so we substituted for rum.
Blood.
Because it's blood. It's blood. But it's a sugarcane-based liquor, so we're going with some white rum. We got 2 ounces of white rum, half an ounce of simple syrup, half an ounce of lime juice, and to spice it up a little bit, I tossed in a 1/4 ounce of our favorite liquor, 43.
43.
So this is your Caprisima.
Okay.
Cheers.
Salud.
Salud. And holy cow, is that good?
Wow.
That really gives the native feel.
I'll take 2.
This puts me in the headspace for
good.
sure.
That's good. Real good.
It's a tropical drink.
I was wondering kind of what they were drinking. At certain scenes, they have like limes and a bunch of stuff, and I thought it was tequila, but
it kind of is. So so this liquor, it's cachaca, and it's the halfway point between tequila and rum. So it's a sugarcane based liquor that is distilled the same way that tequila is.
Chaka.
Yeah,
Nice.
So it was
Very nice.
So we got some tasty beverages in our glasses.
I like cold beverages.
Let's dive into City of God.
Do it.
All right, so I'm going to put this on you right off the bat
Okay.
because Greg brought this one to the table. And tell us why.
This is my favorite movie of all time. Ever
No
made.
kidding.
Boom.
Ever made, ever. It came out, 19 years ago?
Yeah.
Dude, this movie does it for me in all the right ways. Cinematography, absolutely stunning right off the bat. And then
Very first scene, yeah.
just how they're able to fit in so many character interactions and within that 2-hour span. I mean, we know that I'm a character guy.
Yeah.
And the love and the hate and the transitions that they all go through from young age into their adulthood or adolescence, I should say. Spectacular job.
Yeah.
Acting was fantastic. Directing.
It's very well acted.
Yeah, I'm glad that, it makes sense there was 2 people on it. And,
Yeah.
and not only a man, but a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of back and forth as far as that went, as far as the small interactions between men and women, and the tiny nuances that you go through in your own brain to kind of figure out things as a young kid going up into into adolescence. You know, things like sex and drugs.
Yeah.
And rock and roll, because they're choosing their parties. Being
and
groovy.
murder in their case.
Yeah.
Right. Groovies and soul guys and and it started in the 60s. So everybody's kind of trying to hang on to that, and they all. Woodstock and the hippie movement rang true across the world.
Yeah.
So I think that's why
Clearly,
it holds supreme being on my favorite movie ever.
I'm digging the vibe, man. I
All right.
like the energy, and I had never seen this movie before, and I'm kind of surprised because it's been around for a while. But the things that nabbed me were with the way you guys described it. I thought it was going to be more like a guide to recognizing your saints. But in reality, this is more Boys in the Hood. Mm-hmm. Like it's very like the American equivalent would be a movie like that,
right?
Where you're really addressing class struggle and everyday struggle amidst the rise of drugs, especially cocaine in the 60s and 70s,
and that became prevalent throughout the storyline.
Yeah, it's a huge plot point. And it
holds those American gangster kind of features as well.
Very much so.
I don't know. It does it for me. Like I said, I mean, where else are you gonna get this kind of stuff from? I don't know. There's not a movie like it.
I agree. And while I compared it to Boys in the Hood, just because that's the closest we have in emotionality and tone, this really does kind of stand alone on its own 2 feet. A lot of that comes down to, like you said, the acting and the cinematography. The camera work here, especially from Jump Street, is very unique. We've got moments of like the first scene where you've got that slow-mo 360 shot where this movie starts in media res, which is in the middle of the story with narration. And while you're surveying the scene with our main character, where you've got the cops behind you, the gang in front of you, and a chicken at your feet. He's like, all right, hold up. I got to back the story up a little bit so you understand how we got here. And it's done so seamlessly that the narration becomes necessary, which I will bag on narration left and right, because most of the time when you're narrating, it's because you have failed as a writer. However, in this case, it puts you immediately into Rocket's shoes, and you're anchored from the very first second. Well, not the first second. The first time you see him, you're anchored with him as your follow character, your avatar.
And to add on to that, just you're thrown into the mix right away with this runaway chicken. Everybody's trying to get away, trying to find something that they're loathing for, need something. It's the city of God. It's a slums out suburb of Rio de Janeiro.
Yeah.
Things are bad. They were going good for a while. It's back and forth. It's a territory.
Yeah.
When gangs they're thriving, things are good. When they're not, it's a hell zone.
And it's a territory within a territory. Like we could compare it to like Hell's Kitchen, where the city of God is a slum in Western Rio, but then within that slum you had, what was it, like 6 territories?
5 or 6.
Yeah. So it's very segmented, especially among the guys who are dealing.
And if you wanted to be that guy and be that murder piece of shit like Lil Zay, you can take over 5 of those or 4 of those in one night. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're so poor.
It's a very Corleone move.
Right.
Like it's immediate takeover.
Yeah.
And heartless. And the only person so Lil Zay is your villain in this movie. And I guess in the book he's described as being much more ugly. In the movie, I didn't think he was that bad of a looking guy. Like
not as a kid, but
he's just a dude, I mean, I also didn't think Knockout Ned is like this gorgeous man piece either, but
Sue George is glorious.
I'm not saying he's ugly. I'm just saying there's less of a divide between how
that was
good
like a
they
character
look.
trait in the book.
Well, 60s and 70s too. I mean, I think women should still shave their armpits and stuff. I don't know. I'm old school. I don't know.
Fair enough. So this is gonna be a tough one to kind of break down because there's so many story elements. I don't think we're gonna be able to touch on everything. But really, the heart of it bleeds through all of those elements. So every story beat, because you've got Rocket's story, you've got Zay's story, you have Blackie's story, you have Carrot's story, and you've got what was Zay's buddy's name? His right hand guy with the glasses.
Benny.
Benny's story. So you've got these 5 plots going. obviously Rocket is a plot, but you've got all 5 of these stories weaving in and out together. And I know we made a deal that we weren't going to talk about Guy Ritchie in every single episode,
here we
but
go.
it is very Guy Ritchie in the way he's weaving all of this together. And, you know, some of the cinematography as well. But this is also...
It's more the editing.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
Greg talked about the cinematography just being epic. And the other half of that people who don't know the technical side of that is the editing. You know what I mean? You're like, wow, this looks beautiful, but why? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
Like, you're talking about, like, him jumping around through time, telling his story. There's a transition that goes... When we say editing, we mean just the transitioning between shots that set up kind of the pace and tempo. Right. And throughout, I think both of you guys would agree with me, throughout this entire movie, like, we normally talk about like these Guy Ritchie movies, especially being well-rounded and balanced, right? There's highs and lows, there's tension and release. Where in this case, where our 2 directors here, there was never a dull moment at all. It was nothing but tension. And to accomplish that from shot to shot throughout time is that's the spectacular part.
And I think that it goes. Rocket, the main character, he wants to be a photographer. That's pretty much what this whole movie's about. Him coming up and being a photographer.
He wants to get out of the hood.
Starting with the shittiest camera, he admitted it, and trying to be gifted this other thing, and now he's going to papers. Yeah. So I think the shots and the shooting of this movie, cinematography-wise, was parallel to the movie talent. Like these giant gorilla shots that they're using, you know, like with basic cameras and basic overhead stuff, not even
running
moving,
through the streets, not losing
just
in geography.
using lighting. You know, it's
he's got a 35 mil camera. The movie's shot in 35 mil.
Right.
It's like,
oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's raw, it's gritty, and it's kind of that, like, the story's so raw and gritty that it adds, like, in my opinion, so much more, like, texture.
I agree.
It adds
I agree.
It adds
I think
beauty
right off the
to
bat
it,
that
clarity wouldn't, you know.
And that opening scene, I think, is perfect. You know exactly what they're using because they're that chicken's running across. They're using depth of focus on every one of those shots, and they're getting something as small as like a table edge to just to create clarity that this is chaos.
Yeah, like the scene, you know? Like the scene where with the kid and the gun. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, right.
Because this is one. It's so old. Normally we don't care about spoiler alerts. This is one where I want. If you're listening, I want you to see it.
Yeah,
so I don't want to say too much. But in that scene, it's like the focus is on the gun the entire time.
Yeah.
And the most real shit is going on. Like you're sick to your stomach after watching.
No,
but it's like
absolutely. I was going to get into that as well.
But the focus is. I was just kind of piggybacking on what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely.
With, like,
for sure.
I'm going to tie you guys
feel
together
sick after
because
watching some of these scenes.
There's two things that really stand out here, and it's not just it's an element of the editing, but the coloring. First of all, so everything is so vibrant. You can see the sweat coming off their faces.
But so dark as well.
And yes, there's so much depth in those darker, in the purples and the browns and the blacks that it pops, and you focus on how tense these moments are because of that. And the other thing is this editor knows how to cut things quickly, like those chase scenes. You see it in Jason Bourne, and it's almost done perfectly.
Yeah, right.
Like the Bourne movies, they know how to do a run through the street scene. This does it better.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's one of the many reasons that this movie got nominated for Best Editing in 2002.
Yeah.
Like it didn't win, but I don't remember what won that year.
It didn't win, but it should have
was
won.
nominated.
Right.
I agree.
Like probably 2002, probably an American flick.
It was probably a fucking Guy Ritchie movie.
I mean, between like we're talking about the transitions, like camera following a bullet, it looks like it's hitting somebody and it hits like the car window, or car the
side window.
Thank you, mirror. That even to like the club scene where it's the strobe light shooting,
which I love that scene,
which is like it seems like something like it's not really achievable. Like if we were like, let's shoot this scene with the strobe light going up there, how are you gonna pull this off?
And how they move the entire floor, the entire cadence of the movie by switching the sound. It like went from like kung fu fighting into like some deep dark like Jim Morrison shit. You know what I mean? Or I don't remember what song was going on, but and just finding light and finding people's half faces and man, just shooting alone gets you pumped up. Not to mention the amount of violence, which is it's terrible.
It doesn't shy away from it.
But something needs to be said. This is based on a true story. I know it's loosely true story, but these things were happening, and they are happening still. Probably, it's just a matter. That's kind of what we're talking about with Rocket's character. moved through as a kid. Always wanted to be this guy. He always noticed the photographer taking pictures of the killings.
Yeah.
He wanted to be the guy with the camera.
Yeah,
That was
they
his
show
stick it
that
out.
early.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was
It's that
stick it
whole
out.
documentary style from
Right,
that
right.
standpoint. Like Josh said, the narration's there too. You know what I mean? And it's in the best way possible. And the
Yeah, it's
dialogue,
not
character
overdone.
development,
They're not giving
is
away
all there.
anything.
And on top of that, you get the like you
Yeah.
usually just get like sometimes you just get like really cool looking editing and just garbage beyond.
Yeah,
it.
Well,
you're
and
right,
you
you're right,
you
right.
forget that this is kind of a pseudo biopic until the very
No,
end. As soon
totally.
as the credits start
Yeah,
rolling,
yeah.
you're like, oh shit, that's right.
Yeah.
The photographer's real. Lil Zay was real.
Yeah.
Like not everybody was a real character, but
I keep wanting to say Gorgeous George.
yeah, yeah.
Knockout Ned.
Knockout Ned was
he
a
was
real
real.
guy. They show the
it's in his
footage.
stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
And that's
Paying off
fantastic.
police. You know, they were able to get giant amounts of weapons into a small slum.
Yeah,
Just by paying off police and
Yeah.
doing their part, and they were able to run the drug scene. Everybody throughout the movie, the whole thing is like, if you want to get big, if you want to make money, it's all about drugs. You know, it's
Yeah.
not about knocking people off. It's not about robbery. It's about drugs.
yeah.
It's about the
that's-
business.
Yeah.
And that's
That's
kind of
why
where
at the end we got the business now. You know what I mean? It's,
And that's
you're
I
right.
think that's
You're
Lil
100% right.
Zay's downfall of it all, even from a young kid when he went back in. Spoilers aside, he went back in after they already robbed the motel, the whorehouse or whatever, which you
Yeah.
will. He went back in. Everybody thought it was the police that shot these guys up. He went back in with a smile on his face
Yeah,
and
he's a
shot
fucking
every
psychopath at 12 years old.
His thing was never drugs. It was never that. It was being the baddest man on top of that hill. It was about murder. He's a sociopath.
Well, he wanted to
the
be
fullest-
known.
Yeah.
Like he gets upset when they treat him like a child or they call him a child when he's young. And then when he's in control, he gets mad that the papers aren't talking about him. And he's very old school gangster.
He's one of the best villains ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ever.
And
I wouldn't
Benny-
even
and-
consider him a villain at
And
this
Benny's
point.
like
True.
rides, both Benny's like his side accomplice but he's floating
Yeah.
between helping everybody out. He's the one that's holding the slums together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, until he says one phrase to Lil Zay he'd never thought about in his entire life. Zay, you need a girlfriend.
Yeah.
And then
Well,
his
you-
whole
in that
shit
moment-
shuts down and he goes out like gets himself together and he
Yeah.
tries to holler at Knockout Ned's girl and you know we all know how that
Oh,
ended.
that's who that
which
was.
is-
Yeah, yeah.
That was a nasty scene, you know, but it's real. You know, you don't want to think that these things happen, but they do.
Yeah,
you know,
and I
especially
mean,
in
let's,
an
let's look at the world at that point. Like
Right.
you were saying, in the United States, in the 60s and 70s, we had the civil rights movement, but we also had like the United States is known for upending the rest of the world, and
Right.
we were doing that in South America in the 70s. So to tell this story isolated and not rely on the American influence
Yeah.
is fascinating.
Right.
Because it's not a viewpoint or an opinion that we get very often here in the States.
The only way they
Because-
did that is because they said the media won't cover it.
Yeah.
Nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
That was huge to them. That's the only time frame we have basically for this movie. Is it's been a year now. Ned's now he's a straight hoodlum.
Yeah.
You know, it's been a year. Nobody's covering this stuff. That's the only time frame we have is media, which goes back to the parallel story with
Yeah.
with Rocket. You know,
Yeah.
everything's connected. That's why this movie does it.
And it's hard to really pin down. Like it's hard to pin down what makes this movie great without giving away too much about it.
I know I want to give it all away.
Because if I were
No
to
point,
try
just
and
go see
it. I know,
if
I
I were
know.
to try and convince someone to watch this movie,
They,
I
uh,
would not.
it'd be too
It's
much.
like, look, it's
not gonna-
beautifully
I'm not gonna
shot.
tell
It's
you
a great
anything.
story.
Yeah.
I can't tell you
Can't tell you
anything.
shit.
It's like
gotta go
flipping
It's
the
based
DVD.
in Brazil.
See, I bought this DVD like 3 times. I've borrowed it to
Yeah.
other people 2 times, and I haven't
You're
gotten
never
it
getting
back.
that back.
So,
No.
If that tells you something, you
Yeah.
know? This
This
was like
is-
years ago.
I mean, there's a reason. So Time Magazine has this on one of their 100 best films of all time. And the Motion Picture Editors Guild has this as the 17th best edited film ever. The
Injustice.
craft behind this
Yeah,
movie.
Injustice.
And not like when you think of the best films ever, you're thinking Spielberg, you're thinking you're thinking big names,
Big names.
Scorsese,
Yeah, Godfather, yeah.
yeah. And this is just literally 2 no-name directors who the only other thing they've really done was another movie with these actors
Yeah.
or a couple other movies with these actors, and they knocked it out of the park so hard that the Boisterous Time magazine had to take notice.
Right.
That should tell you something about the quality of this film.
I think that was kind of also them picking up their own pieces about not bringing light into the situation in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Because
That's
they should have
fair.
coverage.
That's
you know,
fair.
I mean, what was
But-
going on there was ridiculous. Kids were dying.
True.
You know.
I mean, I'll give a little bit of grace just because I want to really exemplify how hard these directors work to make this so good.
Yeah, I agree.
Like when we're talking about editing, it's not just an editor in a room by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
It is both directors and the editor going through every second of footage at least 10 times.
Right.
They've seen every inch of it.
And sometimes the actors
And-
see if you can get more out of them.
Yeah. And they poured over all of this stuff and gave us such a phenomenal product that the rest of the world had to take notice. So
Agreed.
my hat, if I were wearing a hat, hats
Borrow
off to
mine.
him. Yeah, right. Like I think this is it's not necessarily something that I want to watch all the time because it's a very heavy movie, but it is a film that I recommend to literally every human being who owns a screen.
Yeah. Same. And I have been for 15 years since I watched it.
I'm very glad you brought this
Good.
on.
I'm good. I'm glad.
I mean, there's not a whole lot more we can talk about without spoiling. So let's go around the horn. Final thoughts before we do taco ratings.
Man, I have so many thoughts about this movie. But yeah, like you said, go watch the fucking flick. I mean, it's a great movie. I mean, it's going to leave you with something, and I think all good films should. You know, it might be a little bit of distress, a little angst, sadness, but there's also that element of hope, you know, where, you know, he got out. He found his way, and it was because he was so closely knitted with these gangsters, these terrible people, was his food ticket out.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of what I gather. You know, I mean, without giving away the
Absolutely.
meat, but
Shasti, your takeaway from City of God?
Yeah. So again, I've watched this movie, one of my favorite movies for the last 17 or 18 years. Recently, I've been doing last couple months. I've been doing a ton of street photography, like taking this camera downtown, and you know, street photography is about mainly portraits, portrait shots, candid shots, and like city structures that you compose to kind of narrate a story, right?
Right,
That's
yeah.
the whole point of it. And watching this, like, not only did I look at it a different way with Rocket running around with his camera, but I caught what the directors are doing. Because you said, I said it 5 minutes ago, you said at the shots, you want to set up a narration and to tell your story.
Yeah.
But still give you the documentary feel, like you're there. You're behind that bullet. You're running behind that chicken in the opening scene. And it's cool because it's kind of like, I'm looking at it different, and it also kind of inspired me.
Right.
Absolutely.
After watching it for almost 2 decades.
Absolutely.
And like you might not want to watch all the time. Like there was a period, like every one of my friends, you need to watch this movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? This is probably the movie I've seen the most.
Yeah.
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 So
absolutely.
to watch it, you know, for 2 decades,
I can see why.
and to be inspired in a new way, and to kind of look at just film in a different way, and like the respect for the editors, and how these 2 directors can team up. For already being one of my top movies, that kind of just adds more.
Totally.
And can I add one
Totally.
more thing?
Go
Also?
for it.
Sorry.
Go for it.
There was love interest. There was romantic things involved. It was not overused. You know what I mean?
Correct.
Like so many directors and stuff, they try to add this like flaky, oh, I want you, baby, we're gonna die
It needs
together.
to be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was there. It was gone. And
Such a delicately
and everybody was
balanced
cool.
love
You know what I
triangle.
mean? It was great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was there, fleeting, but it wasn't the main story. They didn't push that. I thought that was very important because if they did that, they'd ruin the movie.
I agree. I think if I were to describe this film to you, I'd say this is the perfectly cooked fish.
Oh.
It's light, it's delicate, it's flaky,
Add a little lemon.
but it's still succulent.
Ooh.
And
I like it when you say
succulent. And having never seen it before, going into this cold, because you guys kind of described it to me, but you were intentionally like I was with this drink. Don't taste it. Go into it bold.
Kind of like how we're
Like we're telling people to do that.
movie.
Yeah.
I
And
want to give it away, but
I walked into this not really knowing what it was about, and really appreciating it both as a viewer, and I know I would have seen this movie differently if I watched it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Having done what we've done for the last year, I've learned so much about film that I appreciate it more than I think I would have before. And just the coloring caught me, the focus caught me, the editing caught me. And I did not pick up my phone at any point during this movie. Like when we're reviewing stuff, you guys usually know because I'm texting you nonsense.
Yeah, sometimes
Like I'll be
oh my God, I
texting
can't
jokes
believe-
about
True,
what's
yeah.
going on.
It's like
you guys had
yeah.
no idea when I watched the.
if you're texting me to that, I'd be like, stop texting.
I wanted to check on you this morning. Like, did you watch the movie today?
Yeah, like I didn't say a word because it hooked me.
Yeah.
And while it doesn't necessarily fall into my favorites, it falls into some of my most respected. So this is probably, I'm going to give away a little bit of my hand here. This is probably going to be one of my highest rated movies ever. That said, we here at Sippable Opinions, specifically on Cocktail Cinema, we like to rate our movies out of 100 tacos because tomatoes suck. So out of 100 tacos, Greg, what do you give City of God?
Well, since I consider no movie has ever been made that is 100, I don't even know what to say. It's one of those movies that there's no words. Like we talked about, you can't describe it.
Go
There's
with
no
your heart,
words.
Rocket.
Oh, I know my heart. It's a 99.9 in my book, leaving
Hell
only
yeah.
that 0.1 for one other movie to hopefully bypass this one.
Hell yeah.
I love this movie with all of my being. Like, seriously, go watch this flick. It'll hurt you. It'll make you happy. It'll make you sad. It'll give you hope. Like, everything's great about this movie, and not just by the feeling, but like we talked about, the editing, the cinematography, the movement and the growth between characters. 99.9, my favorite movie ever.
I was gonna give it a 93, and then I remembered I gave Die Hard a 95, so I have to give this a 95. Just because, you know what I mean?
Right.
This has to be the new 95.5.
Die Hard's the
They're calling
benchmark.
95.5. All right, that's where.
It's like a radio station.
I probably would have called it
station.
if I never gave during Christmas time when I was shit faced Die Hard a 95. I would have said 93 for this.
Excellent.
So
I
I'm interested in your
give,
score. Let's go.
I give this a 96.
Nice. Wow. I'm
I give
actually
this a 96.
perplexed.
I think there's only 3 or 4 movies that I've given above a 90, and there's only one movie, I think, it's got a 97. That was Godfather 1. So, yeah.
So we did good.
Great. You did great. Folks, go watch this movie. I'm not going to tell you anything else. You heard our scores. You know how high we're praising this. Go watch City of God. As of right now, it is available for rent on Amazon. It's also available for purchase. And let's take a look at our Rotten Tomato score. So a critic score of 91 and a fan score of 97. So we're all kind of sitting in that middle ground there.
right in the pocket there.
Yeah. Excellent.
Not me. I exceed.
And that is also the reason tomatoes suck, because they're so wide and varied. 91 to 97. That's the difference between
A plum
that's the
tomato
difference
or a what do they call the beef steaks?
91 to 97. That's the difference
a
between
vine
Die
ripe.
Hard and Godfather. So
Cherry tomato versus beef steak.
no. So for one of the movies that filmmakers have rated as one of the best, go see it. That said,
Good drink.
we'd like to hear what you have to say. So if you're watching this on YouTube, hop down into the comments. Let us know what your taco rating would be for City of God. Tell us why you liked it or why you didn't, and we will disagree with you there. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. You know what to do. If you're listening to this on a podcast network, please go ahead and rate the cast. Every little bit counts. We appreciate every little bit of interaction. And if you'd like to go even further down this rabbit hole with us, Alice, you can hop on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Sippable Opinions. That's SIPPAABLE. You can, for as little as $1 a month, join us and be a part of the team and get exclusive access to our show, The Sip, which we're not even going to tell you what it's about. We're just going to tell you that it's amazing. You get early access to all of our videos and shows and pilots and exclusive
And access
merch.
to all of our episodes. We've got like
Yeah.
maybe 15 up on YouTube. We've got a year's worth of content too. So.
Yeah, Patreon's got it all. Patreon's got it all. We recently teamed up with Patreon for their loyalty program, so now our existing patrons get a little bit of merch every few months just for sticking with us, because we see you and we hear you. That said, Greg, thank you for being with me.
Thanks,
Shasti,
Josh.
thank you for being the king of the keyboard.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Shasti.
Watchers and listeners, lovers and likers alike, thank you for joining us, but we gotta say goodbye.